Most of us don't have a clue what we're doing on the golf course, and perhaps even worse, we don't have a concept of what we ought to be doing on the golf course. Can you help us?
I hope so. A concept is an idea of something that you're trying to do. Simple and concise. Nothing very complicated. And the concept for the golf swing is indeed a very simple thing. Most people, when they play, if they have a concept, they don't use it, because they're more concerned with this little round thing we call a golf ball. And what it does or doesn't do seems to sort of hypnotize us in such a way that the concept that we may have just kind of disappears and we play without it. Well, one of the most important things that you can do is to forget that little ball, because the club takes care of that. You take care of the club. And you must make the club do the proper thing, to make the ball do the right thing. So the concept that I like to have, and the one that I was taught by my dad and Ernest Jones as well, is that the club means everything in the golf picture. If this isn't moved correctly, then the rest of it doesn't make any difference. So it's very important that all of us have an understanding of the golf swing. And the golf swing is the swing that you produce with the golf club. And it's based on two very simple principles. One is a physics principle, which states that if you're trying to propel an object in a certain direction with another object, both objects must move in the same direction. And no one can say that that's not true. That's a solid, perfectly simple concept. So if I'm going to send a ball to you with this golf club, it means that my club must be going in your direction. So when you play, the most important thing you could think about out there is to have this club being swung in the direction in which you wish the ball to go. And it doesn't make any difference what my knees do or my hips do. As long as this club is going to you, the ball is never going to be too far away from you. So that's a very simple concept. The other one is to understand that you are describing a circle with this golf club. And it's much more of a circle than I ever thought it was, because my brother took some pictures from my book where the field plane is at right angles to the plane of the swing. And most of these pictures that we're taking of the swing, we're taking at eye level, so that makes the swing look more oval, more elliptical. So if it is a circle, as it truly is, then you must understand that all the horizontal chords of that circle are parallel to each other and parallel to the target line, which is a tangent to that circle on the same plane. That's geometry. And there's nothing you can do about it, so it's a very constant thing.
Most of us flunked geometry, Manuel.
Well, that's why I'm explaining it to you.
I appreciate that.
So anyway, if you abide by those two principles, you could never hit a bad shot. Now, when things start going badly, then you have to revert back to those solid principles. Now, you're coming over the ball, for instance, that means that the club is going out there. Well, that club is no longer parallel to the target line. So if a person is trying to fix himself, he's got to return the club so when it gets to this point, it becomes that horizontal chord to that circle. And that will help the outside. It'll destroy it. So, but the most important thing is to get rid of this little round thing. I have tried to get all my students, including my tour players, to play without caring where the ball goes. I don't care where the ball goes. I care where my club goes. Because if I'm swinging this club at my target, where else can the ball go? So my conviction is that if I swing this club at my target, I know where that thing's going to go. I don't have to guess. I don't have to doubt. I know where it's going to go. So it becomes a very simple thing to play. And the other thing is that you play with confidence. So pressure kind of disappears. Now, when you inject some of these other things, and when you make the swing and it doesn't go to the target, now you start working and wondering what's going to happen, and then you try to fix things. Well, the more you try to fix things, the more further away you get from these two basic fundamental principles that I just mentioned.
What's the difference between swinging the golf club at your target and doing what a lot of us do, which is steering the club head towards the target?
That's because you're trying to make the ball do something. Anytime you're trying to get the ball to the target, you're going to steer it.
What about the second question, which would be, most of us don't appreciate that the club touches the ball target line only very briefly during that circle. But most of us recreational players want to continue to make the club move directly on the ball target line for much longer than that brief moment of touching the circle.
And that makes people do something like this, which makes a lot of people hit the ball very weak, with very weak actions, and also many times to the right. Because you, although are swinging the club, you don't want to have a feeling that you're going to the target.
And most of us look like we're doing exactly that.
Yeah, you want the club to go to the target.
So how do you get students to understand the conception of it briefly touching the ball target line and then moving back into to complete the circle?
I don't concern them with target line at the ball. Because if they swing the club at the target, that's going to take care of itself. If you were here, like I am, and you said to me, Manuel, give me the club, what would I do?
You would move the club right at me.
Wouldn't I do that?
Yes.
If I put a ball there and you say, hit the ball to me, wouldn't I do that?
Yes.
What's the difference between doing that and playing golf on the golf course?
The difference is, as soon as golf course, we don't have the 5 feet that we have between us, and all of a sudden the target distances are further. People think that they need to swing harder. You forget the concept,
exactly,
and you start trying to steer the golf ball instead of making a golf swing.
Exactly. And that's the problem. I just attended a conference for the future of golfers in Phoenix, and that was one of the things that we discussed. How can we use these concepts that we prove on the practice day and during the lesson periods and take them to the golf course?
Check in with Brad in South Carolina. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm fine, Peter. Thanks for taking my call.
It's a pleasure. Tell Manuel the big problem.
Well, maybe I'm trying to overanalyze things, but I have noticed that in good players, at the top of their backswing, speaking for right-handed players, there is some distance and separation between the right forearm and the right bicep. And in poor players, guys that I play with and in myself, there is very little separation at the top of the backswing between the forearm and the bicep. And I'm wondering if that is something important, and if it is a drill that could work on.
Are you referring to this particular position here?
Yes, sir. At the top of the backswing, my right forearm gets very close to my right bicep, just like that.
Okay. You have to understand that this circle of which I spoke before has a radius. And if you maintain the radius as you swing back, that won't happen. So that if you take the club back and maintain the radius, you will not have the destruction of that distance. However, if you take the club back this way and then destroy the radius, then you will.
Is there a drill that I could work on to help with that?
Yes. Keep your hands away from you as far as possible. Notice that I say the hands. I don't tell you to keep your left arm straight. If you keep your left arm straight, you will create some tension. If you keep the hands away, you will not. So you keep your hands away as far as you can. And that should help you tremendously.
Okay.
Let's talk about the maintenance of that width, of that radius on the downswing, where a lot of players tend to then destroy the radius and get very narrow and steep.
Once you have the radius, if you can visualize the radius remaining the radius that you set up, then if you maintain that radius, then you will have this type of motion. However, most of the time when this is destroyed, everything is going, starts with the shoulders, and then the shoulders get too far ahead, and then all of a sudden your club has to be going down vertically to get to the ball. Because if you kept doing this, you'd miss the ball.
A lot of recreational players get off to a bad start in the first 6 inches to 18 inches and don't have the chance to establish that radius. What problems should we look for at the beginning of the golf swing to avoid, and perhaps a checkpoint position to let us know we're on the right track?
The radius is determined the moment you put the club behind the ball. So when I address this golf ball, I automatically have set the radius. Now, when I swing the club back with my hands, for instance, like my concept denotes, I swing the club head back with my hands, but the radius remains. Now, you must use both hands, because if you use just the left hand, then you become left-hand dominant. And when you do that, you'll notice that this part of the club moves forward while the club head is going backwards, and it also has a tendency to get laid off. So you must use both hands. The right hand is extremely important in the backswing because it helps you to keep the club on plane. If you would just take the club back with your right hand, so you would take it that way, you would never take it that way. It's very awkward for the right hand to do that, but it's very easy for the left hand to do that. So when you use the left hand, it does this. The left hand has this tendency to do it, and the right hand has this one. So when you put them both together, now they move this way.
Let's check in with Dustin in North Carolina. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing fine. How you doing?
Very well. What's going on with that golf game of yours?
Well, I tend to either block the ball or I'll hit the ball off the heel of the club. And I've always thought those were like two separate problems, but I'm pretty sure they're related. I wonder if you could help me out with that.
What happened with your first question?
I either block the ball or hit it off the heel.
That tells me that you're rotating with your shoulders. So that if I would, standing this way, if I would take the club that way and rotate, let me put a ball over here so you can see it. If I would put a ball there and I rotate this, my shoulders, and I don't do anything other than that, when I come into the ball, my club will look this and see if you feel that the way I look is the way you feel. I get this way and I come this way. And that's the block feeling that I feel you do. Now, when you rotate, you're liable to hit the ball on the heel. And that's one of the reasons that people shank. Because when they get here and they spin out, they're actually pushing the club away from them and they're allowing the heel to get too close to the ball.
Okay, so...
How to fix it? Do this drill. Take your club to the top of your backswing, the end of your backswing, and then slowly return the club to the ball so the club is exactly in the same position as it was at address. Now do this very slowly so that you can see and realize what you are doing. And you'll notice that your shoulders are responsive only to the motion that you produce with the club. And you do it with the arms, of course. Now if you did this and you did it slowly, you see, you would never be able to get the club back to the ball exactly the way it was. You see, I've got the ball on the heel and I'm blocked out.
We know how great a teacher you are. Tell us how five-time LPGA Tour winner and two-time British Open champion Sherry Steinhauer is as a student.
Well, as a student, she's excellent. I think that sometimes Sherry, just like everybody else, gets too concerned with the results, and because of that, sometimes she doesn't perform as well as she's able to. I watched her at the last tournament that they played, and she shot that 66, and she just fantastic. However, in the next round, she felt a little uncomfortable, and when she felt uncomfortable, she didn't feel she could swing. And I think that it's important for all of us to recognize that even if we are not feeling comfortable, that feeling of discomfort has to be ignored and pay attention to what we have to do in order to be able to play. I think that Mickelson mentioned it the other day, and Tiger mentioned it the other day too. And I think it's important for all of us to be able to play when we're not comfortable. You don't feel well or something like that, but you have to dispel those feelings and pay attention to what you have to do. That's easier said than done, because feelings that you have a tendency to control you, and if you don't feel comfortable, that discomfort has a tendency to control you, and then you say, well, if I feel like this, I'm not going to be able to do it. But you can.
Let's take a look at her golf swing.
Okay.
Most of these were shot in 1999, and we'll take a look at a couple of swings at real speed, and then we'll see some in slow motion, and you'll tell us exactly what we ought to appreciate. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Now, Sherry sometimes has a tendency to get a little too close to the ball, and you'll notice from the other view when we play that with slow motion, that the hands are so close to her body that she has to use her left hand. She kind of uses what I call the left hand dominance to get the club going away from her, and the hands will move away from her, and the club has a tendency to go on the outside. Now you'll notice when they run it a little bit slow motion that the hands move away from her, and you see the hands are much further away from her at that point than they were when they started. Now she controls it pretty well at the top of the swing. She looks very good. Now the other thing that Sherry has been working on is the fact that she must not use her body, the upper body, to the degree that she uses. And you'll see in this picture that when she starts getting close to the ball, she feels very crowded. Right there. She starts feeling very crowded, and as she progresses a little bit further, that's even more crowded. So that when she does that, and if particularly if she wants to swing the club a little faster, she uses her body in that fashion, which opens the blade and hits this ball to the right. And so we've been working on trying to get her to use her arms more and swing the club to the target with the toe up, so that that body, instead of going underneath and down, would be moving more with the club forward to the target.
Now, we can't tell from this angle how close her hands are,
No,
but
you can't.
will you be able to tell how comfortable she, in fact, is?
Well, that's our feel, you see, because when she tells me that, her appearance seems the same to me, but I can't feel what she feels.
Let's take a look.
That looks over here, and you see she's very balanced. If you would draw a line from where the club was, straight up, she would be very, very balanced.
What are your thoughts on her straightening of the right leg during that backswing? Is that something you work on?
No, we've never worked on it, but that's the way the body moves. Later on, we'll be talking about Byron Nelson, and she does the same thing. I'm very much against this idea of the new teaching principle that they want the right knee to stay flexed as it is at a dress position. I think that's a very detrimental thing from the standpoint of being able to make a full turn.
Let's go ahead and take a look at her with some longer clubs here at real speed.
You see, she stands a little bit better there, but still, if you notice, she's still closer than she should be, and the same thing happens in those longer clubs.
Now here's that driver in slow motion.
Right.
The hands again too close.
Right. And you see how those hands will move away from her as she starts the motion. If you watch the club, it'll be going on the outside. See it? Outside. Then, once she gets a little bit outside, then she brings it in this way.
And then she must feel like she's making a lot of compensations during her swing.
In the backswing. Because she gets it, once she gets to the top, she's perfect. Right there, she's got a perfect backswing. So she accommodates. But I think if she would be able to get a little further away, she would achieve that position without having to make any compensating actions to get there. It would be easier for her to do it.
Is it difficult to get her to feel comfortable when she's a little further away?
Yes. Yes.
Let's keep this going and take a look at the downswing.
And you see a tremendous jamming in a little further. Right there. You see
That elbow wasn't in front of the hip, it was on the side of the hip.
It's on the side. She gets so blocked there, and you can almost see it in this shot that there's a great tendency for a movement of that type to send the ball to the right. Now, if she were a little further away, she wouldn't need to do that.
And it looked like that ball was pushed just a little bit, did it not?
Mm-hmm. And that's the one shot that she gets so upset with.
Let's go ahead and take a look at this fairway wood from the tee.
Now, another thing that you'll notice, that when she gets to the top, there's a certain angle between her, in her wrist, between her arms and her club. And that stays exactly the same as she starts forward. And this is one of the things I really like, because everything starts in the same direction at the same time. See, that angle is still the same as it was on top. So she's done absolutely nothing to destroy it. And that's, to me, in my mind, that's very good. But neither she gets that stuck attitude, stuck feeling that I...
Didn't look stuck here, did it, on this fairway
wood?
wood?
She does.
She does look stuck here, too?
Yes. Notice how the apple part seems to be going too far backwards.
Instead of freely releasing through the ball?
Exactly. And then her finish is very, very perfect.
What would be the lessons for women watching at home after seeing Sherry swing? What would you recommend in terms of Sherry's swing to try to emulate, adopt as your own?
Well, it's a very simple thing. The one thing you have to work on the backswing first. So you work with the swing. So you take the club back and swing it backwards towards the shoulder in one motion, and you let the body just go along for the ride. I can remember Ernest Jones, and he states in his book, the golf swing should carry the body instead of our doing something with it.
Let the body respond to the swing.
Right. And then once you get up there, then you take your arms and swing the whole club to the other side, over the other shoulder, and let it go. It's not a difficult thing to do.
Well, yeah, you've seen most of us play golf, so you know we think it is. All right, Manuel, here's a question. What's the best method for consistent pitches and chips Jason Davis in Atlanta would like to know.
Well, when you're talking about consistency, you're talking about practice. Now, you're talking about technique, that's entirely different thing. But if you're talking about consistency, it means you have to practice, practice, and practice. Now, as far as technique is concerned, the best thing that I can tell you is that when you're pitching or pitching, the mental image of the shot should be much lower than all of you are visualizing. If I were pitching this
Again to me?
not to you, not to you, but if I were pitching this club with this club, which is a wedge, my shot would look that way. And none of you picture a wedge shot being pitched that way. You're all picturing it this way. So once you picture the ball going that high, you're always manipulating the club face so you get the height. And what happens is that you get a lot of inconsistency. So the first thing that I would recommend for you to do is to visualize your ball going straight out, low. And the loft of the club will give you whatever elevation is required for the distance that you're sending the ball. Now, if I'm hitting a ball with a longer shot, I have the same mental picture, but because I'm propelling the ball a longer distance on that same trajectory, the ball will go higher without my having to do anything about it. Now, if you're going to hit the ball over a bunker, you never hit it over a bunker. You send the ball to the target, and the club gets it over the bunker. So the mental attitude that you have will be the key to making your shots consistent. Now, if your consistency refers to the distance that you're going to go, that requires you to visualize your ball stopping where you want it to stop. And interestingly enough, if you see the ball stopping there, you will always have a feeling of a result where the ball stops very close to the hole. Now, chipping and pitching have the same type of, except that the pitch has a bigger swing. You pitch with lofted clubs, you chip with rolling clubs, but the action is the same, except for the size. The mental picture is always the same. Forward. Always remember, if you ask yourself, where's my target, and you point to it, you're never going to point this way with a wedge and this way with a pitch, with a pitch, you're always going to point this way, whether it's a pitch or a chip. So when you're pointing this way, that means that that's the way you should visualize your ball going.
When we've got a little shot around the edge of the green, do you like us to take the club that will get the ball on the green and rolling as quick as possible?
Yes, sir. Definitely.
5 feet onto the green as opposed to 2 feet onto the green?
If possible, yes. That depends, of course, on your pin placement.
What about thoughts on spin on the little shots from the edge with straight-face clubs?
No spin.
Straightforward.
You can't spin the ball with that type of shot because spin depends on velocity. Spin is the amount, the velocity of the spin per minute or per second. But if you're hitting a little chip shot from here to where I hit that ball, there's very little speed, so therefore you're not going to impart a lot of backspin to the ball. So the ball is going to be rolling.
We've got on the phone now someone who's done so well at the game of golf that she too is inducted into the Wisconsin Golf Hall of Fame, and that is your friend and student, Carol Jean Sorensen. How are you tonight?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you for checking in tonight.
Manny, it's so nice to see you.
Thank you, Carol Jean. It's been a long time.
Yes, it's been a long time since the lemonade stand back in the early 60s at my course.
Right.
And you've been a wonderful tribute to the state of Wisconsin, and I was so proud 2 years ago to be inducted into the Hall of Fame along with you and other great players from the state of Wisconsin. I really appreciated knowing you, and I'm so happy to see you continuing teaching and doing such a wonderful job. I have one question, though, you can help me with, Manny.
Okay.
That is, I took off golf for a while. I'm back now and playing again, and I still seem to find the same problem I had when I was younger, and that was what I consider coming over the top. My divots with my irons are always going, right to left. I look at it with an 8-iron, and my divot's 40 yards left.
Okay.
And I need a key to try to help me stop doing that.
Okay. Do you have a feeling that you take the club back on the outside, or do you take it straight back, or do you take it with a nice circular pattern towards the shoulder?
I feel like I'm taking it straight back and trying to turn it back with arms and shoulders.
Well, if you take it straight back, your tendency will be to have the ball go to the left.
Yes.
So if this is your line, can you see that?
Yes.
then your club has to make a circle of this kind, so that when you get to here, your shaft has to be parallel to the target line. Okay?
Okay.
Now, when you take the club back in that fashion, so that you know that this is parallel, be observant, and know and realize the direction of your backswing, and then when you go forward, you retrace the direction of that movement. It's impossible to go over the top when you do that.
Okay. Do you think maybe I'm taking it back too much with arms and shoulders and not enough hands?
Forget that. No. You're taking it back, you said straight back. So when you take it straight back, your chances are that the parallelism doesn't exist. That's number one. So from this position, I'm going to swing it left.
Yeah, okay, I see.
Okay? So I have to swing the club back so that the club is parallel to the target line. And from that position, I retrace the direction of the backswing. Now, don't interpret this as retracing the path. The path and the direction are two different things, and you don't want to retrace the path. You want to retrace the direction.
I think I understand that now.
Okay.
So what you're saying to her is she's getting over the top right at the beginning of her backswing. She's breaking the plane.
Correct.
And she's breaking the plane by going on top as opposed to inside or underneath. Thought it'd be interesting to take a look at a swing that would look as good today on tour as it did when it was winning everything in the mid-40s, and that's the golf swing of Byron Nelson. So as we look at it together, tell us why it would be as efficient, as functional today, literally, as it was 56, 57 years ago.
Well, I think if you look at the swing, it looks almost the same as the swings of today. The only thing that happens, the two things that are, number one, at the address position, if you notice, Byron is standing a long ways from that ball. And one of the things that he had to do, because of his crouching as he came down, that movement that he had in the downswing, if he didn't do that, he would have a tough time getting back to the ball. So by putting the ball that far away from the ball, when he goes down on his knees a little bit and in the forward swing, he can still reach the ball.
And that's funny for a guy who said you couldn't stand too close to it.
Yes. And, you know, remember he shanked for six months one time.
Saying it was the closest thing to a perfect shot.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and let this swing start to happen. And
now you'll notice the plane is just terrific. Now one thing that he does that they don't want you to do today, see that right leg straightens out.
like Sherry's does.
Yes, and that to me is the way the human body moves and responds. And today they want you to keep that knee flexed to the same degree that it is at address. And that, in my mind, is creating a lot of problems because then your body cannot turn. And in order to turn, you have to shift over the upper part over the right foot. And that for the average player...
we hear a lot of that, turn your left shoulder over your right knee.
And for the average player, that creates havoc. The new players can do a lot of things, but when you're talking to the average player, you can't do that. See how crouched he gets. Now, if Sherry did that and had the ball further away, she probably wouldn't have as much problem. But she feels very uncomfortable when you get her far away from the ball.
Now, that club never got anything like close to being stuck.
No. Now, the other thing that Byron does, and Sherry didn't, if you notice, I commented on the fact that when Sherry gets to the top, the angle in her wrist stays the same for a long period of time. In Byron's case, it increases as he goes forward. So his cocking action of the wrist are greater. Now, in his address position, Byron is much more imbalanced than they advocated few years ago. Today, they're getting more balanced. So
knees
you see that
pinched
blue
in,
line there.
which is a little out of favor now.
Right. That blue line denotes the way they wanted you to be. They wanted you to have the left arm and the club in a straight line. Well, that's a position we achieve at impact, but you can't have that at address because if you have it at impact, a lot of things have happened to accomplish that.
And it would be induced tension if you have that position in the address
Not
position?
necessarily, but you see, when you put your club so that it's an extension of the left arm, your shoulders go left and your club head goes right. So you actually have three directions to fool around with.
More than most of us need.
That's correct.
Let's let this thing unfold.
Now, he shifts a little bit. Of course, a lot of people do that today. But the only difference is that he does it with a very balanced structure, whereas today, only the upper part goes because of that knee situation. And if you notice now when he comes forward, his wrists are going to be cocking further
Sergio Garcia does that today.
Yes.
Increases
That's
the
right.
amount of cocking.
See, now, when he gets to that point, you notice that the butt end of the shaft is almost past the ball. So he has to have a tremendous amount of hand action in order to get the club head back to the ball.
But that's a beautiful delivery position, is it not?
Well, not there, because that, for him, it was fine because he knew how to do it. But you get an average player in that position, he won't be able to hit the ball straight.
That's right, because the whole club had passed the golf ball.
Yeah, because they'll hit everything to the right.
Let's go ahead and keep the swing moving.
See, then he straightens up completely as he finishes. But the ducking as he goes through the ball is a very typical thing of Byron Nelson.
What lessons can the rest of us learn from watching that golf swing about our own game?
Which one?
About Byron's golf
Byron
swing.
Nelson? Well, I think the plane is very good. So I think that when you swing the club, you must swing it so you never leave the plane. And there, see, I'm different than a lot of the people because today they want you to take it back straight back a little on the outside, and then they want you to pull. That means you have to do something to get back on plane going forward. And I want to do the least number of things possible to be effective.
We'll take a short break and come back and take your calls in just a moment.
Golf Channel takes instruction to a whole new level. From every turn, we have you covered with Turnstile, Tech Turn, and Your Turn. We'll return to last week, turn ahead to this week, and show you everything to turn your game around. The Turn.
We know golf isn't all about the swing. See how you can lower your score by going over some basic exercises on the next Golf Fitness.
Who's in your top 10? In this 10-episode series, you, the viewer, picked your top 10 various categories, including major meltdowns.
It will be his fourth shot.
Intimidating players. Improbable winners.
Well, safely on the green, a 3-shot lead.
And characters of the game. Join host Inga Hammond as she reveals a new top 10 on the Golf Channel. Golf's home.
Don't miss the final round action of the 2005 LPGA John Q. Hammond's Hotel Classic and watch the best players in the world battle to put their name on the trophy. Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. only on the Golf Channel. Friday on the Golf Channel. Don't miss the LPGA Tour's best when they tee it up for the Corning Classic. Then learn to play like the pros on an all-new edition of Your Game Night. We'll get things started with Charlie Hoffman on Golf Fitness Academy. Log on and tee off to Golf's home page, thegolfchanneluk.com.
Tell us everything, Bert.
Good there, Peter. Thanks for taking my call here.
You're welcome, sir.
I have the question that I have is that I've seen both professionals and amateurs alike with the position of their club head face that he's either facing up towards the sky or towards the target line. And they either say it's open or closed, and I don't know which is which. But is it that important?
Well, that's a matter of terminology. Because if you take the club back and you take it back this way, everybody tells you it's open. If you put this club in the same position up on top, they tell you it's closed. So it's very confusing to the player.
Stop it.
He's on the phone. He's taking a golf lesson. He's very, very busy right now.
Okay.
So
Okay, he's clear.
what we should say is that the club is facing the sky, period, without saying it's closed or open. Now, whether the club is facing the sky on the top of the swing or not, it depends a lot on your grip and the way you take the club back. Now, many of the professionals feel that that's the way it should be, and for a while, if you remember they wanted this part of the wrist of the left hand to be very flat. And when that is that way, then the club is facing the sky. Okay? Now, you can get it that way through manipulation as well. The best way to see the club face at the top is by taking your club and putting it on your shoulder in this fashion. And whichever way that is, that's the way it should be. It's not going to be this way, and it's not going to be that way. So that would be the easiest way to do it. So when the club is swinging back, it's going to be in that position.
Isn't your position at the top of the swing of your left wrist really a function of the kind of grip you took at address?
Yes, to a great degree it is. But it's also a degree to the flexibility that your wrists have. When I was very young, my wrists were so flexible, they always went this way. So my club had a tendency to be faced down a little bit. And I played great, but that was because of my flexibility.
You always played great.
It wasn't because I was trying to put it that way. It was just the way I was built. Now I'm not as flexible, so it doesn't go that way as much. But the wonderful thing about the swing is that the club always puts itself in the proper position. Now when you have neutral hands, then your club face would be what I call a neutral position. Now if one hand is overpowering the other, say if your left hand is way up over, then your club is going to be facing the sky. And I'd rather not say it's closed or open, although we're using that as a normal terminology, but it's very confusing to the average player to say you're open and now the club is in the same position up here, but now it's closed.
If one takes a stronger grip with the left hand, are we more likely to see a cupped left wrist at the top than if the grip were neutral?
No.
No. What would we be more likely to see?
You see it more this way.
More round and flat.
The stronger that you put it, the more flat it is. It's just like if I had the club this way and I swung it, you see my hands are going that way. Now if I take it with my grip, now my hands are going...
Which is a more neutral grip.
Yeah.
So look for a little bit of a cup with a neutral grip.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and check in with Chris in Indiana. How are you tonight?
Very good. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome. What's driving you crazy?
Oh, my short irons. I'm not having any trouble whatsoever on my long irons and my woods, but in trying to keep my club head returning to the target line, I'm finding myself almost playing a sand shot on even going all the way down to my 7-iron. I don't have any trouble in the sand, obviously, because it feels like I'm sliding under each club. Am I giving up on my body? Am I not turning through that shot? I've lost probably 20 yards, even on my pitching wedge all of a sudden.
Are you getting an unusually high shot?
Yes, sir. I certainly am.
Okay. Well, here's your problem. And it's a very common problem. Were you listening to us before?
Yes.
Did you hear me say to that gentleman that was having trouble with the chipping and pitching?
Yes.
That you have to visualize the ball going low?
Correct.
Okay. Well, that's the first thing you have to have. Because when you get into the pitching clubs or the high number clubs, your tendency, from what you tell me, is to try and get the ball to go up instead of go forward. So what happens is that you do exactly what you're telling me, that you're going underneath it. It almost looks like you're trying to get the ball out of the sand. And you'll be doing that in the sand as well as you're trying to go underneath it. So my suggestion would be the same as I told that other person, to take the club back and return it to the same position it was. And you'll find that you'll never return it this way. And that's the picture that you give me from what you're telling me, that you will be returning the club with those clubs facing the sky. Make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Okay. So first of all, change your mental picture of the shot. Picture it going very flat. And notice I say picture it. Don't try to hit it flat. Just picture it going that way. And then do the drill where you return the club to the ball exactly in the same position that it was at address. And those two things should help you get out of that problem.
Let's see if we can squeeze in one more call. Eric in Ontario, go ahead and tell us what's going on.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Very well, sir.
I've got a little problem there when I'm out on the course there. The friends are telling me I'm sliding my hips. Just wondering if you could show me what that looks like looking at you, sliding your hips, and maybe some drill improve that area of my game.
What kind of ball flight do you get?
Generally a medium to high.
Does it go right, left?
It's right to left. Or sorry, left to right. I'm hitting a slice a lot of the time, so I don't know if I got an outside-in swing or...
If you do that, you can't be sliding your hip. If you slide your hip, if you did anything with the ball, you'd be hitting to the right.
Yeah, it's more of a left to right, so maybe it's starting in the center and then going to the right. But as far as I'm told, I'm sliding my hips. So.
Well, your hips always move this way, but they also rotate. They do three things, which I won't go into detail right now. But again, my best exercise that I can give you is to take the club back and put it right back there and see how your hips are when you do that and see how you work with those hips. And you find that you won't be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of motion will always produce a right shot. Right not meaning correct. The direction would be to the right. Have you ever tried to lead with your hips?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Have you ever tried to shift your weight on the forward swing?
Yes.
Don't. Because if you do that, you will be working your hips.
Okay.
So try to keep your balance equal as you swing the club forward, and don't let it shift to your left foot until the ball has been struck.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The momentum is moving to the left, but you're not there yet at the strike, are you? What can all of us do to take the nice warm-up session we have on the practice tee successfully to the first tee?
Okay. That is perhaps the one thing that in all our seminars we professionals talk about all the time. Because it's really sad when you get a person hitting the ball well, or they hit it well in practice, then you go to the golf course and they can't do it, or they don't do it. It isn't a matter of they can't, they just don't. What do you do?
I feel like I'm still practicing and working on the same things I might have worked on the range instead of having just simply warmed up with whatever swing I brought to the golf course that day, or overemphasize the one thing that I was working on and forget to make a swing.
The last part is the true point. Did you forget to make the swing? Whether I'm in competition or whether I'm just playing around by myself or playing with my members, I never hit a shot without the concepts that I told you about. And the geometric principle is already in my system, so I don't have to worry too much about that. But the physics principle is always on my mind. I never swing my club without saying to myself, swing the club over the shoulder with your hands and then arms from the top to the finish in the direction of my target. Every single time. And that's what the average player does not do. And why don't they do that? Well, when they're on the tee practicing, or even in the lesson, they're working on their swing. They're trying to make the motion that they want to make. And then when they get on the golf course, they're concerned with where the ball is going to go or where they don't want it to go. I ask a lot of my members when they look out the fairway, what do you see? I see the bunker, I see the water. I said, why do you see that? Don't you see the fairway? And I ask a lot of them, do you shop? Yes. I said, when you go shopping, do you make a list of the things you don't want to buy? And of course they look at me like I'm asking some crazy question and say, of course I don't. I said, well, what do you do? Well, I make a list of the things I want to buy. But when you go to the first tee, why do you think of all the things you don't want to go? Where you don't want to go? You don't want to go in the bunker, you don't want to go in the woods, you don't want to go in the water. Why don't you say, I want to go down the fairway? And what's going to go in on the fairway is the ball if the club goes there. So the going of the club on the fairway comes first. So why don't you say to yourself, boy, I'm going to make my swing so the club goes down the middle of the fairway. So what happens on the golf course is we lose our purpose. And once you get yourself hitting the ball correctly in your practice or in your lesson, you must maintain the same purpose. To make the most perfect swing you can, perfect swings produce perfect shots produce scores.
Thanks for another great hour, Manuel.
Thank you.
Great to be with you. And great to be with you. Good night, everybody.